Well, hey everybody, Perrin Lovett here, back for another edition of the Prepper Post News, courtesy of Freedom Prepper and that Freedom Roasters coffee. It is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. Hello to everybody at Freedom Prepper, the freedompreppercommunity.com that you need to join right now. Everybody watching at YouTube, and of course those of you listening on the podcast who cannot see that I am once again wearing a Christmas tie. We had a little technical thing here in the studio, and working on it, I had to, that's good enough. It's not really a Christmas tie, it's a winter tie, because it's just snowmen bearing candy canes, or, no, they're not candy canes, it's a winter tie. It's a winter tie under a gray sport coat. All right, babbling on. It's one of those Tuesdays. We're just gonna babble straight into perhaps the best news that I have heard, certainly this year. This is news for preppers, non-preppers, everybody else. I mean, we've got a pandemic, we've got an insurrection of white supremacy. You could call it a civil war. We've got an economic collapse that can only be staved off by a $1,400 or $1,900 universal basic income payment that'll be repeated over and over endlessly. We have neo-Nazis in Congress that won't submit to illegal metal detecting. We've got foreign wars looming we've got just total societal collapse all around us. But you will thank Brahma, your one monotheistic demon invoked for the beginning of the congressional session, or whoever it is that you worship. You'll be so thankful that our president, our brave president, number 46, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., has announced a plan. I've got it linked up here. A plan to promote and support the LGBTIQ people abroad, putting their rights higher than anyone else, putting their rights higher on the U.S. foreign policy agenda than ever before. I'm actually, and they repeat again, LGBTIQ. I think there's some other letters in there. I think they have slighted some people. It's probably an editorial discretion thing. There was only so many characters on the page. I'm not saying that anybody here is a horrible racist, but they left off people. What does all this mean? We've been through this before. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transvestite, intersex, and queer, which I thought that was gay too. But they left off the V, P, and C. If you want to be inclusive, you've got to include vampires, pedophiles, and cannibals. But Joe's doing what he can. He's doing what he can. It's in his first foreign policy speech, Biden announced Thursday that he was ordering all U.S. government agencies active abroad to promote the rights of sodomites and come up with plans to do so within the next 180 days. This goes back to something I talked about last week. This is Joe. This is a quote from our duly elected president. All human beings should be treated with respect and dignity. That's code. That is code. That's got to be code. And should be able to live without fear, no matter who they are or whom they love, unless they are normal, ordinary Christian Americans who love their former way of life. Those are insurrectionists, bigots, and haters, and we got to get rid of them immediately, starting in the military and proceeding on with the help of the banks. Let me just go straight to the story. Biden, who plans a dramatic rise in U.S. admissions of refugees, promised greater attention to the LGBT asylum seekers, including by ensuring action on urgent cases even when vulnerable people first flee to countries that are less welcoming. If you flee to one country where you're no longer a refugee, you cease being a refugee. If you bypass that, you just become an invader. Let me go to this. And the story, this is a Microsoft News story from AFP. Got some wonderful pictures here. We've got the, what is this? The U.S. Embassy in Costa Rica, lit up in rainbow colors. I mean, that, if you know, the Costa Rican people probably think we are utterly insane. Here's another embassy. This is the old U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. Donald Trump did us another great favor by moving it to Jerusalem. Critical stuff in the Constitution. But outside the old, this is what is this? A 2014 picture. Outside of the U.S. Embassy, there's a U.S. flag flying and a rainbow flag right under it. You know, and here we've got people in Uganda are oppressed. You know, it's coming here more and more and more and more. Tell me what you think about that. I think this is the best news. And I've got an instance. This is, you could look at this as a case of the left cannibalizing themselves, or a case of oppression and one more refugee that we have got to get into the United States of the United Socialist States of whatever this used to be. As we know, Western European countries are for everyone. Belgium, for instance, is for Africans and Muslims exclusively soon. Unless, of course, a Muslim actually believes in Islam, as is the case of a Turkish Ayman. A Turkish Ayman will be deported from Belgium after it was found out he posted anti-LGBTQ, they left out some letters, content on social media, and his mosque might be closed. He reportedly wrote that, quote unquote, homosexuality is an illness, and added that it is forbidden by Islam. In other words, they're going to throw the man out of the country and make him a refugee for telling the truth. Let's see. There is no place in Belgium for those who sow the seeds of hate. And they're going to, they refuse to extend his living permit. I say get him over here so that we can have a bigger civil war than we're already having now. Now, not content to keep living in clown world, I've got a story here about more and more and more record numbers of Americans are fleeing the burning, collapsing remains of the USSA, becoming refugees themselves or buying their way into other countries. The number one reason they give is tax relief. There's something to that, although I'm sure that's not the only reason. And there's a story coming up. Got to wait for the census numbers to officially come out, beginning of April-ish, Easter time, which you're not allowed to celebrate, I assume, this year or ever anymore. About the actual total number of Americans that have left this country in the past 10 years will be important for something, I think. We'll get to that when we have plenty of time. All of this, you know, is a total inversion of the natural order. Take religion out of it. Some things just don't make physical sense. None of this makes any sense. And I found a great old article by Rushvi, our friend who was a cheap pickup artist who suddenly found God and has become quite the cultural philosopher. He has a great breakdown of 8 types of degeneracy that the usual suspects just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I linked that up to his website. Do be warned, he's got, right off the bat, he's got some pictures that may require eye bleach. And be prepared to get good and angry reading that, but be inspired also. With everything going out of control, will we ever get back to normal? Well, in a medical sense, if you're tempted to say no, I've got a story you need to read from the Financial Post. Never is, that's a little too long. The experts tell us that within, you know, we've got the vaccine now and people are getting vaccinated at a record rate. So I think they want 100 million Americans vaccinated by about Easter time. Again, you're not allowed to celebrate this year or ever again. So at that pace, you know, probably everybody except for me will be vaccinated this year, which means that we only need 7 more years to get back to normal. And that's an optimistic assessment, because we really need optimism. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. You just can't make it up. We've talked about freedom of speech, censorship, all of this stuff on social media that you can and you can't talk about. And, everybody deserves dignity and respect. Unless you cross their line, then you're out. No questions asked. No excuses allowed. I found a story about an academic discussion of media censorship that was presented in video form. And yes, friends, it was censored, taken down, censored by YouTube. The self-fulfilling insanity. Kind of like this program I've heard about before, I bet you have too, Agenda ID 2020, which was last year, by the way. This is a centralized general electronic data collection of every citizen, to which every government agency, the police, and possibly also the private sector would have access. It's a Bill Gates approved plan. So I asked, what could go wrong? Actually, it was Bill Gates created. It had something to do with one of the big stories from 2020. This sounds like, impossible dystopian future science fiction, but it's already come to pass. And this stuff about the private sector, they're talking about government-created corporations, which are only there to dodge liability and do the government's dirty work that they can't do outright. Not that there's much of a line of distinction anymore. The police will know because they come in force. The police and the military here in the police state. Once they sort out the military, of course, they're standing down for obvious reasons. They've got to clean house and import more of those people that Joe is protecting right now. Never, if you had told me any of this in 1999, I would have just laughed and laughed and laughed. Not laughing now, although we should. Laughter is the best medicine. Vaccines are medicine also, and I've got something by Dr. David Martin with the distinction between a vaccine, something that cures or inoculates one against a virus or some other kind of infection, and gene therapy, meddling with genes. There is a difference. You can listen to that on his podcast, or there's a transcript. Why do I bring that up? No reason. No reason at all. And I've got this one. This was going to be the final word of the day, but I had to move it back up. Here's something great. We need a pleasant voice. If you're tired of listening to me drone on, take a quick listen to Grace Ann Kelly. I have no idea who she is, but her voice is wonderful. She's Australian or English or something. Beautiful woman, beautiful voice, and she's talking about what they do to scare and condition our kids in the context of ID 2020 and the gene therapy and all that. And it's worked on the majority of the population. Not so much with this supermarket that you may have heard of down in Naples, Florida. A place I used to love going to Naples all the time. Great. Best medium-sized city in Florida for my money. Really great now that they have this supermarket where they refuse to bow and bend and scrape, and they're not scared of the agenda, and they just don't care. Got a story here quoting one news outlet quoting another, and this one is honest because they when they get shocked and scared, they suddenly start telling the truth, and it's hilarious. Amid the ongoing thing we're not really supposed to talk about, a Florida supermarket is sparking outrage online after video surfaced of customers and employees going about their business. I'm editing this for obvious reasons. The 15-second clip was shared Wednesday by the fake news media, some guy who was astonished when he walked into the popular Naples, Florida grocery store only to see people both young and old flouting the rules and living like people have for the past 10,000 years. I am Joe, help us out, Joe. Get more utterly incompatible savages into our dying nation immediately. I mean, all right, the last word of the day, Bayesian, Bayes, IAN. And I put an exclamation point. That's just a method of probability modeling in statistics. And I've got more reading. Mean old Perrin comes along with more reading, 193 pages, written up in a report by Dr. Stephen Quay, who I believe is both a medical doctor and a PhD of something, biology. And yeah, I have a quote here I was going to read, but I better be really careful with this. The hell with it. This is the central takeaway. 193 pages. It deals with real research being done in the medical field in China, because something started in China and certain Chinese people want to get to the bottom of it. So they're doing real research. And there some mighty big questions have come up about several things. Here's the sentence that kind of says it all. Obviously, if is the key word here. Obviously, if a vaccine containing the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2 was being administered to patients in Wuhan in December 2019, the question of laboratory origin is a settled matter. There's been a lot of speculation, not in the real news, but in the real news, there's been a lot of speculation about if you look at the virus, and apparently the Chinese have looked at one. They've isolated it. They know how it's different than all the others, unlike other medical agencies around the country, or the world, that is. There's the way the viruses work. There's what they call the furin cleavage structure, which kind of taps into a cell and does the bad thing. And this one, I saw this about a year ago. Immediately they started working on it, and there's something very, very strange, unnatural about this one. Almost like it was tinkered with by somebody. If they can figure out that it was tinkered with, then they can move on to finding out who done it. But that is merely important news. But we need to support our president in his bold effort to completely transform what's left of the remains of the USSA and help us all. Together, we can get through this. And we can do so with Christmas ties and mildly censored reporting of the news. So that's it for Tuesday. Unlike Rush Limbaugh, I'm not a trained broadcast professional. I never know how quite to start these things or sign off. So I'm just going to say goodbye, folks, and God bless.